Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have Dr. Denise Cook. Would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Oh, hi everyone. Yes, I'm Dr. Denise Cook. I have a PhD in neuroscience, and I'm here today to talk about my research project, which is trying to link genes to personality type.
So darn cool, so darn cool. And so, Denise, would you like to tell us a bit about Personality Genie? What is it?
Yeah, so it's a research project that I started in 2018. So when I first got into type, and that was back in 2012, I had like a major upheaval in my life where like basically nothing was working. I'd like hit rock bottom and was trying to like analyze all this data that was like flooding into my mind. And that's when when I bumped into personality type, and I started seeing these four-letter symbols on websites. And I was like, I need to look into this. Like, what are people talking about? And that's when I bumped into like the Jungian psychology, and I was reading a lot of Personality Junkie, because in 2012 they were like the most developed website, and then there was also Personality Hacker just starting. And so that's where a lot of my background comes from, is actually from AJ Drench's INTP snapshots and all the other types, because I was trying to like figure it all out together. So that was back in 2012. And at that point I was like, with my neuroscience background, everything I knew and what I had been through, I was like, this connects all of these unrelated points that I had picked up in graduate school on like how the brain was working, and kind of like coalesced everything all at once. And I was like it was the first thing in 5 years of graduate school that finally made sense. And at that point I was like, I need to write about this. This is like a theory of behavior. But when I got into it, I was like, oh, well, as a scientist, all these people are saying like, this is pseudoscience. These are the arguments against it. That like, there's no scientific explanation for like why, people just don't accept the idea that there could be categorical types. They think personality is a spectrum. And so at that point I was like, well, before writing my book, I probably need to have some concrete evidence that types exist. And so at that point, I kind of shifted gears to set up a research project where I collect people's genetic data, and I give them surveys on to determine their personality types. And then the two types of data will be linked together to kind of show, the hope is that the cognitive functions have a genetic basis.
That is so rad. Denise is looking for participants. She wants around 3,000 participants ideally, and 200 of each individual personality type. So if you have your DNA from 23andMe or Ancestry.com, go ahead and submit your DNA to Denise, and you'll get 2 free reports with it as well. You'll get a Trudy report, and you'll get Dario Nardi's report for his personality test as well. So if you like free things and you like to help neuroscience, go ahead and click the link in the description box below and help Denise out with her research project. And so I'm wondering, what are some of the reasons you have for believing that personality type is genetic?
Okay, so when I first got into personality type, it was through basically a very emotional upheaval time. And what happened was that it was actually scary. It was like a 40-day grieving period, followed by like a lot of rumination. And then for 2 years, my brain was just like rapid fire making connections between all sorts of like scientific fields, and connecting everything up with personality type and Jungian cognitive functions. And at that point, I started to see some patterns. And one of the patterns was that when you're not behaving according to your personality type, you get very depressed and fatigued. And there's actually something called falsification of type. And so that seems to be, to me, and it matches up with the animal literature, in which there's like an environment animal match or mismatch. And so when there's a mismatch between like your personality and the environment that you're currently living in, you get, there's stress on the body, and that's kind of telling you like, oh, this is not a good match. You're not surviving very well in this environment. Your body shuts down. You have less energy. You're not going to reproduce as well. And so to me, that sort of said like, oh, well, if we can oscillate between stress and happiness based on what we're doing, right? Like my rapid fire connecting time was like super exciting to me, very pleasurable. It gave me a lot of energy. And I was very like excited about that period of time and that cognitive map that I was building. Then like there must be an innate drive, and there must be something underlying that's genetically based. And then later I got into research in behavioral genetics, which is research on twins. And they show that identical twins have more similar psychological traits. Identical twins are more similar than non-identical twins, even if they're raised in separate households. So that seemed to support the fact that there's a large component of personality that's genetic. But what I do think is that like while the cognitive functions are genetic, there's like the extroverted functions are taking in information constantly from the environment. So those are making links all the time and updating your internal map. And so that's where you're learning. You're learning both about the world and yourself, and how to navigate the world in order to get your needs met, basically, is what the learning process is all about. And so that changes over time.
Yeah, the falsification of personality it's a very interesting concept, because if you're able to help people live more in accordance to their own preferences, then they're able to be less stressed. And it's shown that when people are less stressed, they have longer lifespans, they have less gray hairs, and they're healthier. Their immune system is healthier when you're not stressed.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm super interested in that. You're more engaged at work, you're more engaged in life, you're more engaged with your family. Like everything kind of combines together. It's super holistic. And to me, that was like, oh my goodness, like why don't more people know about this? This is like an important concept.
Yeah. You're helping at the forefronts to make people more aware of this.
Yeah, I'm trying. That's one of my goals, is to both make academia more aware that that this is something important to study, and also like in the general public, like this is an important thing. Like a lot of what we're doing is trying to like a lot of what our minds are doing is trying to like navigate so that we're like less stressed and happier in our lives.
That's amazing. Yeah. If you're able to help people reduce their stress, you help them improve their health, and you help them improve their lifespan, and just every area of their quality of life.
Yeah, everything. It's like it's about quality and quantity of life, and like that's what we want to improve, right?
That is so true.
And it's not necessarily about like how much work you're doing. Like that's not what the stressful part is. It's actually what you're doing. If you're doing the wrong types of, if you're focusing on the wrong types of skills that are not a match to your personality, like that's draining you. Like that's making you miserable. And just by like doing a small shift, but I mean, it's not small because it's hard for people to change. But that can significantly improve your life, right?
It really can. Yeah. And so, Denise, how has learning about personality type made you less stressed as a person?
That's a good question. So initially it didn't. Like in 2012, when I found personality type and I like made my cognitive map and found out about all of this stuff, I was like, I have all the answers. Like that's all I need. Like now I'm set. Like, and what did happen was that that self-judgment and that anxiety and that like negative self-talk that I had like all my life, like depression has followed me all my life up until then, that disappeared. So that was good, but I didn't have all the answers. And things have been actually challenging since then. I've had 2 kids since then. And that's a major stress in my life, and it will continue for a long time, I bet. But now I'm viewing it more in a positive light. Like when they're very small, that's a huge stress to me to be here. Like I was home with my youngest because of the COVID pandemic for 16 months. But overall, if I have an outlet for my intellectual needs, then that gives me enough energy in the evenings and the weekends to kind of like have that attachment to my children and want to be involved and want to like do fun things with them as well. If it's all about them, like I realized, and that's what I realized over the last like year or two, it really has a negative impact on myself, and I start to resent like everyone around me. So I'm still learning. It doesn't end. I think it's a constant struggle between, like dominant and inferior function. And, and the stress, it helps sometimes, like it helps with some insights sometimes. I'm learning a lot through them too about how like both my kids are born like completely different people, like from day one, and seeing as their personalities evolve too, like what the differences are and how it matches up with like a genetic basis, right? That they were born like on day one, one was screaming and one was quiet, and how that kind of persists through as they're growing up.
Yeah, that is so true. Having little ones is quite the task.
But what type did help me with was to recognize that, right? Like I could recognize like after 16 months of being home and just doing like routine, like stay at home mom stuff, that like that had led to like a buildup of negative energy, I guess. And that to get out of that, I had to try and like connect with people, share my ideas. And then all of a sudden, like the cognitive map that I built 8 years ago kind of resurfaced, which was really weird. I was like, oh, look, I have access to all this interesting stuff that I used to think about that I'd kind of forgotten. Like yeah. I didn't for a good long while, I wasn't even talking about type or viewing my life through type.
It suddenly resurfaces, and then it helps you make sense of it all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It helps you make sense of like negative experiences, positive experience, and everything. So
yeah. When you mentioned how it helped with the depression and it helped with the negative self-talk, it kind of gives you a language to what you've been experiencing. It's like, oh, it's okay to be that way. That you don't have to experience shame. Yeah, there's a label to it. Like there's a word. Yeah.
No, that's exactly it, because it helped actually, understand a lot of like past childhood experiences and things that I had gone through, past traumas, I guess. And it helped me see them in a new light, and it helps you see your parents in a new light as well. That like it was my perception of their actions that was leading to me like being upset and like negative, and that it wasn't necessarily they weren't necessarily trying to harm me, right?
With some people, sometimes what I see with parents is that they'll try to make their kid more in their likeness. So sometimes there'll be a certain type of person, and they'll try to unconsciously try to make their kid more like that person. And that's what they see as the acceptable way of living.
Well, yeah, my mom's an ESFJ, and like there's never I'm always so stressed when she's around because she doesn't stop moving, right? Like they're busybodies and always on the go. And that was how it was. Like, she's like, oh, well, you used to make your bed when you were little. Like, you used to do this when you were little. And I was like, well, but I don't see a point in doing those things anymore. Like, they're not important to me. But they, back then, that was exactly a behavior I picked up from being in the home, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And there's a lot of other things, like, why are you so quiet? Like, they used to always want me to go out and be with friends and socialize and...
Yeah. And it results in the falsification of personality that we were talking about earlier, and how that causes stress. When people have expectations of you that go against your natural mode of being, it can cause you to actually like get really stressed about it. And So learning about type is kind of like, oh, I didn't have to do all those things that people were kind of forcing me to do that didn't make sense to me. Like, it's okay if it doesn't make sense to you to live your life that way. It's all right. Yeah. Type gives you a level of self-acceptance with yourself. Yeah. Yeah. And with that comes a lessening of stress.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
better quality of life.
Or at least a better understanding of what things will stress you out and what things give you value and you take pleasure from, right?
Exactly.
You still kind of have to organize your life around that, and there's still going to be times where I guess what's thought is that you still have inferior needs that you want to meet. So there are times where you'll have to be stressed in order to get those needs met, just like I'm having, to be stressed having a family and parenting but that's also an important, like the thing that came in 2012 was that realization that people were important to me and that I had to make time in my life for them, because before that I was like 16 hours a day working in the lab. Like that was my singular focus. Like I was going to, do the professorship, academic life. And at the end of the day, sometimes like that conflicts with, what your husband's going to be doing, and what you actually want to be doing and what you want to have time for in your life. So
that is too true. It gives you a framework. Yeah. And sometimes people need that. What I like to say is that sometimes people find their way into the type community because they went through an experience equivalent to an ontological shock.
Mm-hmm.
This is when they have a major thing that shifts their fundamental belief system in some way. They say that the effect of this is similar in the brain to PTSD. And so having a framework to really make sense of it all almost calms down that existential crisis in your mind. It's like, oh, that's why everything was happening that way.
That's a really good way of putting that, actually. I've been reading papers on exactly that thing, that the ontological shock is a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
There's just this buildup of stress, and then something acute happens, like you lose a loved one, or you suffer some sort of job loss, and then like your whole world kind of explodes, and like your mind kind of goes through all of your historical information, tries to like piece it all together.
Yeah. That's
interesting. Exactly. That's what I find, is that if you're trying to introduce someone to Jungian psychological type or any of his psychology, a lot of it is like, well, you need to experience it sometimes to understand it.
You do. Yeah. The breakthrough moment for me was probably all my friends got typed by my ENFP friend, and she really helped make sense of it all to us, and she explained it. It helps make sense. Like, she also typed my entire family too. Like, she's really, really intense with that. And it made everything make sense. Yeah. It's like no one is purposely trying to be malicious to each other. Like, no one wakes up in the morning thinking about all the ways they can piss you off. Normally, it's a personality difference that's accidentally clashing. Yeah. Yeah. And it helps you be more compassionate towards people too. And it's like you don't blame it on some sort of innate thing of that person, but you start to see things that you would have initially judged as something that makes sense. And so it helps with the compassion process and
definitely
forgiving the self and forgiving others. Yeah. And so, Denise, I would like to show people how to sign up for your website if they want to participate in your study.
Perfect. That's great.
Cool. You click, I'd like to participate, and there's this whole consent form, and then you log into Open Humans. Because I already did that, it'll take you straight to this page.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And so in Open Humans, you would submit your DNA that you'd either get from 23andMe or Ancestry.com. Once you're done that step, it'll take you here. The first test you'll take is the Truity test. Before you take the test, it'll give you this study ID email address, and you just copy it here like that. And then when it asks you for your information, you can just put it in both the name and the email slot, and then press Start Test. Yeah.
If you're having any trouble with the Open Humans part and submitting the DNA, there is a little video that also goes through everything. to show you if there's any mishaps there, if you can't get back to where the page is that allows you to upload your DNA. But you can what you can always do is continue through and do all the surveys and go back to Open Humans and upload your DNA later as well. That works.
Great to know.
And if there's any problems, you can either email me directly if you don't care about sharing your email address, or you can email me through the Open Humans site, which is private. And so it's a private communication link where it will just give me your project ID. And so no email addresses or names will be shared. So we're using Open Humans in order to be able to collect data anonymously, so that there's no linking between like a name, email address, and a person's DNA. And so all of that will be kept private and secure. And all of the data that we collect is analyzed on secure servers. Nothing ever touches my computer. Nothing ever gets downloaded. So you can read through the consent form to see like how everything's being managed. But in order to comply with ethics regulations, everything had to be anonymous and secure, basically.
That's really great. Yeah.
And we're not going to steal your data and share it with third parties. And like, this is all private to me. You're going to have access to the dashboard for as long as the study is live. And then I'll be able to like communicate any new results and anything that comes out of the study directly to the dashboard for everyone to see.
That is fantastic. Yeah. If you ever have updates with your project, you can always contact me and I'll just interview you again on those findings.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So what about the INTP profile really resonated with you? What made you really believe that type was real from it?
So for me, when I had that ontological break, that psychosis period, what was in retrospect, because that happened, and then I found Jungian personality type, and then I read Naomi Quank's book, Was That Really Me? She kind of explains how the process of getting out of a grip experience, you go from like your inferior function through all the functions back up to your top function. And that's exactly what had happened. Like I went through a like 4-week grief period of like I had lost someone important to me. And then, the stages of grief, the reminiscing, the like, so a lot of like rumination, which is SI based. So a lot of like going through all the positive memories. And then what ended up happening is like kind of my brain unraveled backwards all the way till childhood in like vivid detail, which is not usual for my autobiographical memories. I don't usually have access to all of that data. And so it was, both shocking and frightening all at once. And then what started happening was kind of like a manic period where I'd bounce around emotional states trying to connect data, like external data, to what I've experienced. And when I landed on personality type and I was first typed as an INTJ, but it didn't quite fit. And I didn't quite agree with INTP either, because from like my self perception, I wasn't a big picture thinker, but like as that like any type bouncing around ideas and trying to connect kind of came about, and I was reading so much. It was like a really obsessive analytical period. Like I was just going, I was reading so much and connecting so much stuff together at that point. And yeah, so there was no doubt. Actually, I didn't really know when it was going to end. It was really like 2 years of like not being able to focus. So I couldn't focus on any like SI details. I had a lot of trouble like doing stuff that was easy before, like managing my banking, my bill paying, taxes, all that. Like I couldn't focus on any like numbers or anything like that. And then what I thought maybe was like getting back into like TI was probably not. Like I was still making decisions on the basis of what others expected of me for, another 8 years. But the mind finally calmed, and like right now I can tell like when I'm using extroverted intuition, how my mind's like kind of pleasantly bouncing around, but I can't focus on details. But I kind of switch back and forth now.
That makes a whole world of sense. A lot of INTPs, probably a majority of them, type as INTJ first. It's totally a thing. Like,
Yeah.
like 70% of my INTP friends will mention that yeah, it's a common test mistype for.
I think, yeah, because of the introverted judging, I guess it's like socionics versus MBTI. Like, we should really be judgers because we're more like controlled in our behavior. Like, we have a lot of control over our inner minds. And we do pick up, like we don't tend to be so scattered as like a INTP profile would make us out to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, now I am more because I embrace it more.
True. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
you kind of realize like what you've picked up as like a, like a social norm. You're like, well, a lot of like, and especially now since my time is limited, like I don't have like endless hours of the day to do whatever I want to do. It's really about focusing the hours I do have on research, and like neglecting a lot of other stuff because you can't do everything all at once, especially as a parent. Like, you don't have those 16 hours anymore to just like, oh, I can do, I can procrastinate and then get to my research and then, right.
Yeah, yeah. So if you'd like to help Denise with her research and help the girl out, sign up for her study, especially if you are a censor, because it's very hard to get censor participation. Yeah. Basically right now you like have 3 ESFJs.
Yeah, exactly. I have 3 ESFJs out of about a 500 sample. It's mostly INTPs and INTJs and ENFPs, ENTPs.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to represent your type in DNA, then go ahead and submit it to Denise. Yeah, she will do all of the research so you don't have to. Yeah. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing about your experience as an INTP and how this has helped you in a period of life where you had an ontological shock. And it's very commendable what you're adding to science. It's great that you're trying to find the link between personality type and genetics. Someone has to do it. So I'm glad that you're at the forefronts of doing this and helping us have more validity in the eyes of neuroscience. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the goal.
Mhm.
The goal is to kind of introduce type into the academic community in a way because they need evidence, right? So
Yeah, it's really amazing how you're collecting evidence for all of us. So thank you on behalf of the MBTI community. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
This is gonna be amazing. Yeah. I'm speechless that you're doing all of this great work. You're paying for it too, because you don't
Yeah,
really.
it's all self-funded. I'm not affiliated with any university. It's all been self-funded so far. I've had to like create the website, get web developers. I have someone trying to do the social media aspect. So while I can concentrate on the research.
Yeah, yeah. You're doing all this self-sacrifice for the ultimate benefit for the type community.
I wouldn't, yeah. But this is what I really want to do.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing.
So it's using my skills and my knowledge to kind of contribute and to see, it's a FE, right? It's like, it's how can I help people? How can I help the scientific community? How can I help science by doing what I love to do naturally, basically.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. You're capitalizing on your natural talents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It helps you stay outside of the falsification of personality that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, because you're using your personality to its greatest advantage. Yeah, yeah. We could all take a page out of your book, out of your.
I don't know if it's always so simple.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of choices, there's a lot of constraints and stuff. It's not always so simple. I'm lucky to have like a husband who supports me and supports the family and stuff, so I can get to do, this exciting research, but that doesn't pay any money. So eventually I'll figure something out, hopefully.
if you know about any grants that, Denise can apply for so that she can get funding, let me know in the comments so then I can forward it to Denise.
Okay, thank you. That would be great.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm in Canada though, so
Totally.
a bigger challenge than being in the US.
Absolutely. Audience members, feel free to participate in this study. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Basically, Denise is paying out of her own pocket for you to take 2 tests, and you get to keep the results. You also get to help science. Yeah, it's a win-win situation. So if you want to contribute to this win-win scenario, go visit Denise's site in the links below. Yeah, pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thank you for teaching us about your project, and best of luck with it.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you in advance for participating in her study. Yes, that's a bit of peer pressure to go and sign up. Yeah, and bye everyone.